Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you back to the Dynamic Decisions podcast, where we explore the strategies that drive successful decision making in the world of business. Why? Because the best decisions come from great conversations. I'm your host, Teasha Cable, CEO of C Model Data, and today we have a leader in global talent strategy and business development. His name is Tyler. He's the founder of HireFrame. With his extensive experience spanning commercial real estate, social media marketing, Tyler brings a very unique perspective on how businesses can make strategic decisions about leveraging nearshore and offshore talent. So at HireFrame, Tyler specializes in staffing, mission critical roles that drive operational efficiency, and of course, cost optimization. So Tyler, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to dig in. Tell our audience all about you and all about your company, HireFrame.
Teasha, you probably get this all the time, but you would make a fantastic hype woman. It's like remarkable. I don't know if you wrote that out ahead of time, but you might be in the wrong business. You are like ready for radio, so or TV or whatever. But obviously, you've got a podcast. I am thrilled to be on here. That was such a good introduction. So thank you so much. Bring in the energy on the Friday. You know, obviously the listeners wouldn't hear this because before we started recording, but Teasha was singing on a Friday, which was gassing me up. I got super excited about that. So yes, I am thrilled to be on here. I love talking about, business building, honestly. So when Teasha reached out, I thought it was a no-brainer. I thought it was a great podcast to join. As you mentioned, I am one of the founders of a company called HireFrame. And you put it perfectly. We are a remote staffing company that staffs mission-critical roles with talent based in Mexico and the Philippines. We like to say mission-critical because when most people think about working with nearshore or offshore, people say different things, overseas talent, they typically think of, call center, like customer service, that sort of stuff, and then virtual assistants, which for HireFrame isn't really the case. We do a little bit of that, but most of our positions are roles like accountants and operations associates and other kind of highly skilled roles like podcast editors.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's
great.
That's me and us in a nutshell. As you mentioned, I have a background in business generally. And before building HireFrame, I was employee number 4 at a company called TaskUs, where I helped grow the company from $2.5 million in revenue to $130 million in revenue over the course of about 6.5 years. And I left shortly after TaskUs sold to Blackstone Private Equity. And then a couple years later, they went public on the stock exchange. So I have been working with fast-growing companies, most of them internet companies, venture-backed tech companies, and helping them scale operations for basically the last 14 years.
This is fantastic. Congratulations too on doing that successfully. Not a lot of people have that
Thank you.
as a part of their resume. So, okay, HireFrame operates at the intersection of cost optimization and mission critical staffing. That's what you just said. So this is a space where decisions carry significant human and operational consequences. I'm wondering about when you're advising clients on transitioning roles to nearshore or offshore talent, how do you navigate the ethical complexity of those kinds of conversations, especially when leaders are wrestling with the impact on their existing team members or facing, legit pressure to reduce costs or stay competitive?
That's a fantastic question. And it's interesting. In the time that I've been working in this space, I will say that the conversation has changed dramatically. There was a time when I mentioned that I was at that company, TaskUs, where we used to try not to use the word outsourcing because outsourcing was considered a dirty word. And, I would sometimes do sales calls with people and they would ask, where's your talent? Where's your call centers? And I would say, they're in the Philippines or they're in El Salvador, or they're in Mexico. And it was almost like a conversation stopper. They would just kind of say, I'm not interested in, sending jobs overseas. To your point, I have found that it has changed a lot in the sense that modern business building, I think, thinks much more globally. Pandemic, obviously, sped this up. But people got a lot more comfortable with remote work. And I think that also made them more comfortable with working with people outside the United States. In terms of how I handle that conversation, though, specifically, I will tell you that the kind of the misnomer about our business, it's pretty rare that we are hiring for a role that would replace an American employee or replace anyone at our client's business. What I've actually found is that most commonly our clients, they have their internal team, which is so backlogged with the oftentimes data entry type work, administrative type work, that they're not able to actually get to that strategic work that their managers and their executives want them to do. So oftentimes for HireFrame, we're bringing on personnel that would support the in-house folks, and that would actually free them up to do the work that is going to drive the most ROI for the company. And that's where I usually find when I talk to a founder and they say they have hesitancy, I ask them, I say, can you please tee up an introductory call with me and your internal team? I'll go ahead. I will go face to face. I will handle any objection they have. I will ease any concern they have. And what I find is by the end of the conversation, their entire viewpoint has changed, where they've shifted from, is this person coming for my job? To now they're thinking, how much can I delegate to this person? Because they're very excited at the opportunity to work on, honestly, the things they were hired for in the first place, but they haven't got to.
You know what, if we stay here for just a moment, this is making me think about the ways that this actually becomes growth strategy in some ways. So you had this experience at ETA, right? And at Staircase Capital that gave you firsthand insight about this buy versus build decision making that has to happen. And
Totally.
so then you after you conducted the self-funded search and ultimately chose to build HireFrame rather than acquiring an existing business, I want to know, what are the counterintuitive insights that you got along the way that you can share with our audience about where value really comes from in service businesses? So how does this turn into a growth mission? When you're advising your clients now, or even just for our audience, how does that experience influence how you think about organic growth versus acquisition strategies?
So, such an interesting question. Let me unpack that. So, I'll share first and foremost the number one thing that I learned from doing the entrepreneurship through acquisition, or I did a search to try to buy a small business, is I learned that, candidly, you can bucket companies into two buckets, and I will challenge anybody to fight me on this. You're either in one or you're in the other, and if you're in both buckets, then you're in
Something's
trouble,
wrong.
honestly. Deep trouble, yes. You have your companies that need more demand. It's that simple. And the classic example is I met a lot of businesses where they were just kind of middling. They were barely getting by. And what you had at the forefront of that business, you had someone who was, they're an operator. They're focused, they love the service. They love the product itself. They love that part, but they're absolutely terrible at marketing or selling. And so the classic line that I always got from those companies was they would say, if I just had a little bit more leads, pipeline, whatever it is, I'd be a mega business. And then you kind of ask them what they're doing about it, and it's very clear why they're in the position that they are, because they just don't know what to do or how to prioritize that. The other bucket is that the companies that do have a ton of demand, but they're very bad at operations. And so that's the key takeaway that I took when I think about building my own business. I always reflect on that time, and I think about how really it comes down to those two things. And I think the best thing you can do as a founder is be self-aware of what the most important thing is, and you have to allocate your time, resources, and investments appropriately. Now, I'll bring this back full circle to your comment about, or your question about buy versus build or growth through acquisition or organic or whatever it is. I think that the slippery slope is to think that if you are in one of those buckets and you think that acquiring a business is going to cure all, it's just not. It's the opposite. It's one of the most you talk to anybody who's been through an acquisition, it's one of the greatest distractions for your business. You are going to lose a minimum of typically 2 years in terms of just trying to integrate the people, the customers. Don't even get me started about systems. One of the most unlikely services that we have at HireFrame is we actually staff people that are on the merger and acquisitions teams at some of these companies that do mergers and acquisitions, and they are staffed because of just one problem. Hi, we just acquired this business. They use HubSpot. We use Salesforce. How do we put these things together? And I'm just saying it's those types of things that people really dramatically underestimate what a huge, massive distraction that is. So my question to any business that I'd be talking about that'd be considering acquisition is I would ask them, do you have your own house in order? Because otherwise, this is going to, and I mean that in both ways. It could be operationally. Are you prepared to handle this additional demand? And are you prepared to integrate this team and still maintain the same strong KPIs that made your business in a place where you could do an acquisition, right? On the other side too, is that do you have the sales and marketing engine to bring another business into the fold and not lose the entire growth of that business? You have to be that strong as a sales and marketing team. You have to be able to say, I'm going to quickly understand what this product is and how the heck do we continue to sell and see strong growth from those things. If your house is not in order, you should really be, in my opinion, waiting to do those types of acquisitions. But if you have built that foundation, then sure, if it makes sense, go ahead and do it. And what I find too is the other thing that I'll say is what's very evident to me is that if you talk to anybody who has done a successful search and they've bought a business, that first acquisition, typically they used to say it takes 2 years. If you talk to anybody who's an ETA now, I think the real timeline is 3 or 4 or 5 years to find a business that is actually something you want to acquire and successfully acquire them. The interesting thing is, once that first acquisition happens, you watch anybody who does ETA, the second acquisition, the third, the fourth, it's wild. It tends to happen within, I would say, 18 months of that first acquisition happening. And the reason being is because you have the ability to start to build relationships with the companies that are in that sphere. I mean, your partners, your suppliers, the people you're selling to, strategics, that sort of thing, right? And so when it comes to acquisition, I don't proclaim to be an M&A expert, but it really does seem like good old-fashioned relationship building. If you can know somebody, break bread with them, and truly establish a relationship, you are setting yourself up for a much, much higher likelihood of success with that acquisition.
That's good. Is your house in order? I'm
Is it?
asking everyone who's listening, is your house in order? And if your house is not in order, then your questions should be, well, why not? And what do we need to do to get it in order? And then the second question is, why are we doing this anyway? Why is this
Yes.
so important? What outcomes are we actually going to achieve with this acquisition? That's good stuff. You told us
Yep.
you spent a bunch of time at TaskUs, and there you
Yes.
progressed through multiple roles, which gave
Mm-hmm.
you the rare vantage point of how like BPO and staffing companies evolve. So the
Yes.
global talent landscape has really changed dramatically with the normalization of remote work,
Mm-hmm.
geographic arbitrage. You kind of told us a little bit about this before, and it becomes less of a competitive advantage for an organization. When clients come to you, for example, and they want the same cost savings that were possible 5 years ago, how do you, how do you actually calibrate their expectations and still give them a bunch of value? I'm really looking for what kind of framework do you
Yeah.
have that helps them to understand where the real strategic advantage now lies?
Oh man, what a fantastic question. This comes up a lot. And the classic example that I give is that I'll hop on a call with someone, a client, or maybe a prospective client. And the classic example is they have Googled what does someone make in the Philippines, right? And they're like, well, I thought this was going to cost $2 an hour or $3 an hour, that sort of thing. My answer is kind of twofold. First, one is a tried and true. You pay for what you get. And so I just it's one of those things where you have to be in business long enough to be comfortable doing this. You have to be comfortable with someone making the wrong decision and hopefully coming back to you later on. because I'll talk to someone and I can just tell that their mind is made up and they've decided that they want the cheaper option. And for some people, they just have to learn that lesson. Even the best salesperson can't really convince them. But I'll just basically walk a tightrope where I'm not going to lecture them, but I am going to give them the information. And what I tell them is basically this, is that at the end of the day, in some of these places where you have your kind of like, I call them emerging talent pools, India, the Philippines, LATAM, etc., Eastern Europe, in these places, outsourcing has existed since the 80s. So you're talking about, we now have about 40 plus years of development and infrastructure and investment, etc. Rightfully so, these talent pools are starting to become global players. And with that, guess what? The price just went up.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way here in the United States that I'm 41. I don't know your age, but I talk all the time.
We're not telling. Yeah.
We're not going to say that. We're not going to say that, right?
Mm-mm.
You're 21. Just kidding. But I say all the time, it's like, hey, when I joined TaskUs, I was making $28,000 a year. And guess what? I was 27, 28 years old, But good luck finding a college grad at that salary. What are you getting, right? So I always say that kind of like, you kind of have to understand the times have changed. And that's actually a good thing. The quality of talent is a lot higher. Whereas your baseline used to be, do they speak English? Can they communicate well? That's not a thing anymore. Everyone that gets a job in outsourcing in the Philippines is extremely proficient at the English language. And it's not even a thing to kind of say that. The second part of that I'll answer to your question, though, has to do about this. With the emergence of AI, it's changed two things. One is that it's shortened the gap. Now you have incredible technology that can basically take someone who is based in wherever in the world, and it's able to level them up. So now the gap is a lot shorter. But the second part is, as we start to see some of this simple work, these lower kind of entry level type jobs get automated, what's left? Work that requires critical thinking, subjective decision making, etc. And so in that regard, what I also try to educate our customers about is I try to get them to think differently about the talents. I say, if you're coming to HireFrame and you're thinking of us as a virtual assistance company, I'm going to stop you there. We are not a virtual assistance company. When I think of virtual assistance, I think of spoon feeding micro tasks to somebody. Hey, here's a list of people. I want you to email this exact email template. That is not what HireFramers do. HireFramers are comfortable building process where there is none. And that's the difference. And for better or for worse, you're going to pay for it. But in terms of the dollars, here's what I say is that also, do you know your actual employee costs? Because most people think about it. They don't. Most people think about it, and they think about it in terms of, they say, hey, I've got a resource. I paid him $60,000 a year. $60,000 a year divided by 12. Bada bing, bada boom. Here's my cost. It is not. You should be multiplying by 1 you should be multiplying by 1.3. An $80,000 a year resource is $100,000 plus.
That's right. Because you're not even accommodating for like opportunity costs on time and everything
exactly
else.
And not to mention that $80,000 a year person, guess what? They're an American. They expect a raise within 6 months. Within 6 months. And if you can't give them their dream career path, they're out the door.
They're gone.
That's just the
and
reality.
Then you got to pay for that. Yeah, your retention problem is going to be very costly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, and I don't say this as to knock, there's a tendency, right, to kind of fall into this trap of like knocking Americans. I love this country. I love the people. I think we're capable of incredible things. We create this stuff. The American expects to be promoted because that's the American dream. That's the confidence we have in this country, and it's wonderful. The thing is that what I try to preach is just, let's be realistic. Is that you can't, as a business owner, you can't go with rose-colored glasses. You got to kind of understand the situation for what it is. So at HireFrame, when I hire someone in the U.S., I'm very aware of what they expect in terms of their career trajectory. What do they expect in terms of earnings? And I try not to cut any corners with any of that.
hmm This will be my last question in this. How do you do this? So one is location. We kind of talked about that. But let's talk a little bit about the diverse industries piece of this. So you've actually done work across multiple real
Yes.
estate, social media marketing, BPO business development. But each one of these requires some fundamentally different approach to how you create value.
Hmm.
So when you are pattern matching across these experiences in order to make decisions for HireFrame, how do
Yes.
you distinguish between principles that transfer across industries versus context specific
Mm.
tactics that won't?
Oh.
And maybe give us your biggest learning about what actually does translate and what doesn't.
Wow, you have a fantastic question. So you are very good at this, Teasha. In case people don't say it enough. Okay, so you made me think of two incredible lessons that I learned at TaskUs, and this is going to be a slight variation of I think the question you're asking. What was really cool about my experience at TaskUs is that I was employee number 4, right? And this is a employee intensive organization. We did outsourcing, so by the time I left the company, there were 13,000 employees. So I was one of many people. And now TaskUs, I think, is, like 40,000 people or whatever it might be. Massive,
Wow.
massive global company.
Yeah.
Now, what was really cool, though, was that I had this incredible opportunity to work with the founders throughout my entire experience there. And so I was a part I was in the room for strategic decision making. There were two things that we talked about at TaskUs that I've taken with me. One is we would do the analogy. Have you heard the analogy of the dirt road?
Tell me. Tell
Okay,
us.
so I classically I butcher sayings, I butcher analogies,
That's okay.
so that's just
Yeah.
me. There's a lot rattling around inside this brain, and I don't always get it right. But I'll tell you, the general gist of it is this idea that when you start a business, you're in the jungle. You are literally you have your machete. You are hoping this is the general direction you're supposed to be going. You are hacking your way, and the idea is that you go from hacking your way through the jungle to hopefully eventually you get to some type of path, but you're still in the jungle. You're clear a path, and then the idea is that you go from that to eventually you find a dirt road, and then as you get to the dirt road, you're going, getting closer to civilization. The end point for any company should be to eventually get on the highway. Now it's like the road's built, your car is built, you're cruising, you're doing different things. A publicly traded company is on the highway. They're not trying to figure out product market fit. They figured that out. They're doing that, right? So I've taken this analogy with me. And what I understand from this is that the people and the decisions and the frameworks that are perfect for the jungle, they're not always perfect for the dirt road, and they're not always
100%.
perfect for the highway. And
Yeah.
it's a self-awareness thing that I have, discovered about myself, is that I'm probably a jungle dirt road guy. If and when if I'm lucky enough to be on this ride that is HireFrame and we do get to the highway, because that's the dream. Not every company gets to the highway. By the time we get to the highway, I'm probably not that guy. And that's
Yeah.
just reality. You can look at my background. I am
Yeah.
not a business person in a box. I will gas up my co-founder. I don't know if he really considers himself to be a highway guy, but if you look at his kind of archetypes, he's perfect for that. He is investment banking in-house as well as at Bank of America, got his
Yeah.
MBA at HBS, and then eventually worked at Boston Consulting Group before he co-founded HireFrame with me. He's your perfect archetype for a highway business person, executive. He has all those skills and traits, right? And so that's what I always think about, is that there's I think a slippery slope. You're business building, and let's say you're in the jungle. You look at a company that's way ahead of you and you say, why aren't we more like them? A classic example is in the world of sales, is that it's very easy to introduce a lot of red tape based off of sales trauma. It's like the first
Right.
time that you have, an imperfect handoff from sales to operations, you go, okay, that's it.
We need
Yeah,
process.
hands up in
Right.
the air. We need
Right.
process, and
It's a
you start
no.
right, and you
It's
and you
like,
start to say, listen, I'll tell you, that was my experience at TaskUs was by the time I left TaskUs to send a contract for signature, you
Yeah.
ended up having to get 4 different signatures internally,
Mm-mm.
4 different sign-offs. You had to get sign-off from the head of sales. You had to get sign-off from the head of IT. You had to get sign-off from the head of operations and the individual site director within that, whatever. All
Yeah.
that red tape was there for good reason, but
Yeah.
that red tape would kill you at the jungle level. There is
That's
just
right.
no reason
Agreed.
for it, because when
Right.
you're in the jungle, it's about hacking through and
I
getting to the
just got
next
my
step.
machete and we're
Yes,
knocking it out. We're on our way.
and you have totally, and you have to say, you have to recognize things for what they are. Is
Yeah.
when you're in that stage, you have to say, guys, we're so fortunate to have gotten totally screwed on this deal, because,
Yeah. We get to
we now
learn.
we're now learning. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
That's right.
that's the greatest lesson, is it's that dirt road. And I constantly tell myself is that I say, and I say this too as a business owner, I would love to retain my entire team. I love my team, but I recognize that some of them are fantastic for this stage and they
Yeah.
won't be good for the next stage. And that is just a part of going from the jungle to the highway.
That's right. I know all about this jungle. I'm in it. I tell my team all the time. But the key, though, I think the one key, and this is something that I learned from my experience
Yeah.
working in successful companies, is that you do have to be looking for the signals, though. So not so much looking at other companies and going, I want to be where they are right now, but going, what are the signals that validate where I'm at right now,
Yes.
and what do I
Yes.
need to do in order to find that repeatability? So here's our last segment, because we're going to run out of time before we
Let's do
know
it.
it. And this is my
Cool.
favorite ever. I guess my listeners are probably tired of hearing me say, this is my favorite part, but it just is. So
You're
it's
honest.
a, it's a decision making persona assessment. So we're going to
Mm-hmm.
explore your decision making style.
Whoa.
I'm going to ask you 4 different approaches to complex business decisions. After each one, you're going to tell me how much the way I'm asking the question actually resonates with how you would approach decision making. The
Mm.
scale that you have is a 0 to 100%. And then when you only have 4 and you only get 100% across all 4, and no, I can't give you all 4 and then you answer. You have to do them one at a time. Okay?
Okay. Got it.
Okay. Here's the first one. It's called the feeler. It's a values driven leader. So this persona prioritizes alignment with core mission and considers the human impact of business decisions on all stakeholders, clients, placed, talent, and internal teams. So when considering a new staffing engagement or business partnership, I find myself asking, beyond the commercial opportunity and efficiency metrics, what are the human consequences of this decision? If we
Mm.
help this client transition roles offshore, are we setting up their team members for success with proper transition support? Or are we contributing to a chaotic process that harms people on both sides? Are we building
Mm.
relationships where the offshore talent we place genuinely grows professionally and feels valued? Or are we perpetuating a system where talented people are treated as cost centers rather than strategic partners? Even when growth targets and revenue pressure push for rapid scaling, I need to feel confident that we're creating sustainable value for everyone involved, not just optimizing for our own metrics. So, how much does approaching major decisions through the stakeholder impact and sustainable value lens resonate with your leadership?
Good question. And I hope I'm doing this right. I would say I'd put that one at
Aha,
seven.
you didn't know it was
Yeah.
going to be this tricky, did you?
It's tricky. So I would say 70%. Is that right? Like, is it adds up to 100%, or is it for each one I give an individual percentage? I would say for this one, 70%. But
Oh,
is it for each individual one, I just give the percentage. It's not supposed to add up to 100,
oh
all
no, it
4,
adds
or
up to 100.
oh, it adds up to 100. Okay, gosh. Okay, then
Yes.
let me back up for a second. That does make it tricky.
Aha.
So for that one, I would put that one at 40. 40.
Okay. That leaves you with 60% left for the
Mm,
next 3. Okay, you ready to keep going? All right. This one is called a planner. It's a strategic
Mm,
visionary. So
uh-huh,
this persona thinks in market cycles and structural trends, anticipating how today's decisions will position the business across multiple future scenarios. So when
mm,
making strategic decisions about HireFrame's business model or client solutions, I ask myself, how will this choice position us as the global talent landscape continues evolving in unpredictable ways? If AI and automation eliminate entire categories of offshore roles we currently staff, will our client relationships and talent networks allow us to pivot? Or will we be locked into a declining market? As wage arbitrage diminishes and clients demand more sophisticated value beyond cost savings, are we building capabilities in talent development and operational optimization that will matter in the future? I need to design strategies that create optionality, building foundations that strengthen our competitive position regardless of which specific market scenario unfolds, rather than optimizing for only the most likely path. So,
yeah.
how much
So,
does that work for
and
you?
I'm gonna give color too on all of them. That's
Yes,
okay.
please. That's
So,
what I want. Yeah, I want that.
yeah. So on the first one, just to
Yes.
back up, for that one, it definitely resonates a ton. Clearly, I applied 40% to it. The thing that I would say though is that it's hard, I think, at the stage of the business that we're at to allow that to be the entire way we make decisions because you
Hmm.
just kind of don't know. You can try to be mindful of things, but there's going to be, I think, just if I were to describe where we're at, we're probably still in the jungle at HireFrame. So there's a part of this that's going to be, there's always going to be chaos a little bit because
Yeah.
that's kind of part of it. For this one, I would only say 15% for this one.
Okay.
And the main reason being is that I think that for the stage that we're in, and I say this from experience, it is a potential sort of trap to fall into to try to understand where the future of work is going. I don't think anybody knows that. And right now, we are in the middle of the AI hype cycle. I use AI at HireFrame. We use AI. I will tell you this. Let's just, maybe this will be a good clip for you. AI is not good. It's not good yet. It's just not. And it's like, listen, for the people that are
Not by
talking about how great
itself.
AI,
Yeah,
if you
not alone.
if if you have a personal stake in AI, aka you're a company that is doing AI or you are invested in AI, you don't get to comment. You don't get to comment because it is not truthful. That is the reality. Is that, listen, and I'm trying, like I am trying to use AI specifically right now. I'm trying to use it in a lot of sales work that we do. It's just not that good. It's not that accurate. Period. Full stop. So, I would love to understand where AI is going. It could change dramatically in the next year. It could also take us 20 years to get to the place that I think everyone thinks we're going to be in the next month. That's not my job. My job is to continue to win new customers for HireFrame and learn about how to service those customers best. And then we go from there.
Okay. Just a disclaimer for my audience. So by itself, AI is not good. Our
Yes.
company is an
Yeah.
AI company, so we're going to say
Yeah.
we're dependent upon AI. But no, I got you. There's so much development, right? There's so many things that still need to happen. I wouldn't trust AI on its own either. I don't. What we're building is in order to make the human more efficient and better with artificial intelligence. That is what this is all about. And with proven science and proven decision making frameworks, these things that have been around for years that help businesses to grow and be effective. AI is just a tool. And I think
Right.
people keep looking at it like it's alive. It's
Yeah.
mathematics in a tool. Let me keep going though here, if you don't mind, because I don't want us to run out
No,
of time.
what I'll say about
But
your
go ahead.
business is the
Yeah,
data is your business involves data that AI can actually leverage. What I'm
that's right.
referring to is, sorry, I'll backtrack. I'm referring to the AI magic trick, which is this idea that something can come in and be effective without good data. And I'm saying
Come on.
that's the difference with AI. AI is not there. It can't do that magic trick yet. But with given great data, it can do incredible things. So, to be
That's
clear,
good.
your business would be one that I would trust. It's the ones that are like, classic example is there's a bunch of hubbub about a company called 11X. 11X is they replace SDRs with AI. You can just Google it. You can Google it yourself and you can see what people talk about. It's not there. And that's because the data that 11x uses it's based on public data, LinkedIn, etc. And that's not always great, right? So you
Yeah.
continue. Anyway.
It's insufficient for sure.
Yes.
Okay, here's
Yes.
our next one.
Let's
It's
go.
called the counter because we got one more and we got to finish before we run out of time.
Let's
So
do it.
this one is called the counter. It's a
The
challenger
counter.
of assumptions. So this persona instinctively questions industry orthodoxies and conventional wisdom, often finding breakthrough opportunities by challenging what others take for granted. So when evaluating staffing strategies and business approaches, I find myself asking, what fundamental assumptions about global talent are we accepting that might be outdated or simply wrong? While everyone in our space focuses on cost arbitrage and geographic sourcing strategies, are we missing how remote work has actually flattened competitive advantages, made skills and cultural fit more important than location? What if the
Yeah.
traditional staffing model, where we profit from the spread between what clients pay and what talent earns, actually creates misaligned incentives that prevent us from building the deep partnerships that drive real value? I tend
Yeah.
to examine why certain industry practices become standard and whether our unique background across multiple industries positions us to see what opportunities that pure play staffing firms can't
Yeah,
take.
this is a solid 25% for
Okay.
me. Resonates a ton, clearly. So let's get to the last one. I'll give color in both with the time we have left.
Okay, here we go. And then, okay, I'm going to ask you to do. So, first of all, we're going off track a little bit here because I'm going to give you the last one and I'm going to tell you to answer after you give your color, you're going to
Yep.
answer a question and give advice to the
Cool.
audience as well.
Okay,
All
let's
right,
do it.
so here we go. The last one is called the data driver. It's an evidence-based decision maker. This persona demands quantitative validation while recognizing that relationship-based businesses require balancing metrics with qualitative judgment. So before committing to client engagements, talent pools, or strategic initiatives, I ask myself, what specific metrics will definitively validate whether we're creating real business impact versus just activity beyond surface
Yep.
level metrics like placements, or what leading indicators like client retention rates? What am I actually doing? And I'll stop there and
Yeah.
let you tell me how your data driver instincts work.
Yeah. So obviously this one's a remainder. I think I've got like 20% left. And I think this
Yep,
worked out pretty
20%.
well. Yeah.
Okay.
And so listen, data driving for us, our instincts are really simple. You have to, first of all, you got to build the foundation, which means you have to just collect the data. That's the first thing. And
Part one.
our approach is always this, is that first get the time under your belt of having data, right? That's the thing, because it's common to kind of say, let's react to a very short sample. We just say, let it play out a little bit. And what we use data for is that data is not a decision maker at HireFrame. It is a conversation starter and a conversation foundation. So the idea is that let's all have the conversation about, we're not talking about things that we suppose, we're talking about things that are facts, right? And then we just allow that. That's not going to be the end of the conversation. It's just the beginning. And the example that I'll give you there is when it comes down to roles that we pursue at HireFrame, there's a tendency to say, well, if this is responsible for 60% of the roles that we staff, then surely it's the only role we should focus on. We have learned in the past that if you look at economic cycles and also different advances in technology, that can change very quickly. So if you allow the data to make that decision for you, you could be in a tough spot. You have to combine that with also what is effectively instinct.
I feel like you're selling C model right now, and I'm just going to let you do it. This is great.
There you go. Buy C model, everybody.
There it is. Hey, so before we go, because thank you so much for sharing that, two things.
Yep.
One is, would you share with our audience? Share with them, based on your experience and all the work that you've been doing, if you had one thing that you could share and say, this is the key, what would it be?
It's really simple because it's top of mind for me. I'm singularly focused at HireFrame on top of funnel. And obviously I'm biased here. When I talk to founders or aspiring founders, whatever it might be, they're so focused on the product. And I get it. Everybody, the world is telling you product driven sales, product driven marketing, product driven acquisition, blah, 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 product led growth.
Yeah.
Totally agree. And I understand all of that. If you don't have customers, everybody, you don't have a business.
Come
That
on.
is it.
Say
And
it
so,
again. Actually, I'll say it for you.
yeah,
If you don't have customers, you don't have a business. I
you
don't
don't have
care
a business.
what kind of products you have. If you don't
Totally.
have customers, you don't have a business.
Without a doubt. HireFrame works with a lot of seed stage founders where they're doing
Okay.
founder led sales.
Yeah.
And many of them have figured out that their number one thing is they just need to have more conversations with prospective customers and
Yeah.
customers because they're still trying to
Absolutely.
figure out the product. And so
Yeah.
the thing that I think about, and I will think about, whatever business I do after HireFrame, my number one thought is distribution. How can I sell more faster? That is the
Yeah.
number one thing. And if you look at some of the quote unquote most successful entrepreneurs that we all think of, their ideas are built around distribution.
Absolutely. Tyler, we are so aligned. I want to thank you so much for being here. Would you tell our audience where they can learn more about you and more about HireFrame?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Just look up, it looks like Tyler Rachel, but it's Rochelle. I'm French Cajun. So it's Rachal. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find HireFrame is HireFrame.com. I'll just give out my email because it's not that hard to guess, everybody. It's Tyler@HireFrame.com. You can email me directly as well about, whatever. If you're interested in working with HireFrame, if you were inspired by this conversation, you have some questions, I do enjoy that. The last thing I'll say is that I do try to do a lot of knowledge sharing. So I would greatly appreciate if and when you do find me on LinkedIn, give me a follow. Check out my stuff. Teasha, you probably appreciate that engagement's everything. When you're just kind
It
of
is.
putting out content, you're getting no engagement. You're basically shouting into a void. So,
Yeah.
let me know you hear me. So just give me a little bit of a whatever. You can also disagree with me, but yeah, I would
I
love it
love
if
it.
you found me, follow, etc. But thank you for having me on. This was
Yeah.
awesome. Go get C
Thank
Model,
you.
everybody. Go buy C
Yeah.
Model.
Thank you so much. And to our listeners, I would like to thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, the best decisions come from great conversations. So if this episode really did spark some new thinking about how you approach global talent, business building, stakeholder-centered leadership, please subscribe, rate, share it with your network. Keep the conversation going on social media using Dynamic Decisions Podcast. And until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep leading with purpose.